on, guys? This is Dan Wynn
And Mike Glaspie.
And welcome to the Military Cashflow.
So today we are going to talk about how to be more organized in life. We're going to get straight down to the nitty gritty. For everybody that follows our podcast and our content, you realize that most of our guests are active duty military family members. Dan is still active duty family member, right? And I did all of my investing up front and starting my business while active duty. So the question always is asked, how? How can we actually do it all at the same time? And it comes down to organization. So to start this off, Dan, what's your number one thing, man? How do you truly organize your day moving forward?
All right, so I can pretty much sum it up into one major thing, right? Even if you don't have any goals or you're not even working towards any end, if you just want to be more organized in life in general, especially if you have a business, the number one thing you need to do, in my opinion, is learn how to backwards plan, right? What that means is planning out your day before the day happens, planning out your week before the week happens, planning out your month before the month happens, right? You're planning that stuff out prior to it actually happening. So for example, one thing that helps me, get through and organize my day is the backwards planning piece, right? Like I carry around my note card with my schedule here. It has everything that I'm supposed to do. This is like yesterday's schedule with the timeline and like, hey, what I need to get done first. All of it is sectioned off, and it's also prioritized to make sure I'm, putting effort into the most important things, right? So, and making sure I can get things done and utilizing and maximizing my time as much as possible. So, the number one thing, in my opinion, is that backwards planning thing.
And that's so huge for military members because. Again, we talk about this and we harp on this so much. So many military members do not realize what is ingrained in us, from just being in the military in general. And backwards planning is something that we all do. It's done at the highest tiered echelon, all the way down to the platoon level, to the squad level, right? We're given a mission or an objective. We're given a timeline that we have to execute it. And then we have to backwards plan everything to today. And honestly, if you just do those small, minor things, like Dan's talking about, all right, here we go. I have a goal of purchasing 10 homes by December 31st, 2020. That's the end state. Now backwards plan. What does that mean? Where do I need to be at in 3 months from now? Where do I need to be at the end of this month? Where do I need to be at the end of this week? What do I need to do today? Right? And one of the best books that really kind of like drives that point home is The One Thing.
Gary Keller,
right? So if you guys are out there struggling and just don't even know how to conceptualize some of the goal setting and planning, get the book, The One Thing. The One Thing. That one's huge.
Yes.
So another thing that I like to do specifically, and this was actually instilled upon me, this wasn't the military, it was from a good friend of mine, Ruben Garcia, proven by Ruben. He told me, he said, hey, if it's not on the calendar, it does not exist, right? So here's the point is, because you brought this up during one of the last episodes, Dan, there's a jar reference, right? You got the big rocks and you got the little rocks. Could you expound on that little methodology again?
Yeah, so there's and it pretty much talks about it in The One Thing as well, making sure you're prioritizing the things that you're doing. So you only have one jar. Your jar is basically your time. You can fill it up with as many tasks as your time would permit in that jar, right? So you got your important things, the big things that if you think about your bucket or your jar, right? Those big things would be your big rocks, right? And then you have those little bitty small granular things, those things that don't really matter as much. They don't hold as much weight on your life, right? So the objective is to knock out those big rocks first. Take those big rocks, use your time to knock out the big rocks first, and don't spend all of your time on the little granular things that don't really matter as much or as not going to add as much value to whatever you're trying to achieve. Right.
And that's exactly it. So like, think about it like this, guys. Say you start filling in with those granular sand, little bitty pebbles, you fill up half of that jar, you can only fit one or two big rocks in there, right? But if you put in the big rocks first and then throw in the little stuff, those little things will kind of cycle through the big rocks, right? And then fill up the rest of the jar. So you can truly maximize. That's what that concept is about. Maximizing your time, making it efficient. So when we're talking about being productive here in life in general, how do you be more productive in life? It's by taking those large influential rocks and putting them first. For some people, that's family. For some people, that's religion. For some people, that's your side hustle, that business to generate income. For some people, those are investments. But when you kind of put that self-development, that self-purpose first, then you put in the Netflix, right? Because everybody loves to binge watch Netflix. Put those in last. Put going to the bar with your friends last. Put those big ticket items first, up front and foremost, and you will be astonished at how much you can actually accomplish throughout the day, the week, the month, the year.
Yes. I think using that jar analogy, I think you have a set jar for different things. Like you have a jar for family, how much time you can spend with family, a jar for the business that you're talking about. You have a jar for your personal time and things. So obviously those jars would be different sizes, but even still, every single jar, you want to fit the big rocks in as much as possible, instead of sitting around not doing anything with your family, just watching TV, which is, in my opinion, would be like a little salt, a little granular freaking sand. Actually go out and spend some quality time and do things that are creating memories, those big rocks for in that family bucket, right? Same thing with the business. Hey, what's going to matter most? What's going to make it? I think Gary Keller says, do the things that are going to make your life easier. It's something like that. Like, if it's going to make your life easier or better, that's what you want to knock out first versus the things that don't really matter as much. So yeah, coupling those together, coupling the backwards planning with the pretty much prioritization is definitely going to help you, show you how to be more organized in life, so.
And the thing with the calendar, guys, is there's a psychological thing where people actually have a greater fear of losing something that they already have than they do have the motivation to gain something that they don't currently have. So to kind of break that down a little bit further, if I told you, hey, I need you to run across the desert for this $5 bill, you're gonna be like, man, nah. But if I was to say, hey, if you don't run across the desert, I'm gonna take your $5 bill, something in your mind might be a little bit different. Now, I'm not saying people are gonna run across the desert for $5, but you get my point. The fear of losing it or having it taken away from you has a more psychological impact. So think of and use this knowledge, use that insight. That's why it's always important to continue to read and develop. Use that insight to train yourself. How about you put something in the calendar and say, hey, I now know that between this time, I have blocked this time out. So everything else that people have to want me to do, I can't do it during this time because it's there, right? It's already there. You can't lose that opportunity now. Because now if you do, you have a risk of losing the opportunity, right? So use that psychological kind of challenge on yourself. At the same time, for everything that you say yes to, you say no to something else. So as soon as your friends say, hey, do you want to go out to the bar? And you say yes, not saying that's wrong, not saying that's wrong at all. Please go enjoy your life. But just realize that you said no to 3-4 hours that night and doing something productive, and probably 3-4 hours the next morning because you're sleeping in with a hangover to do something else productive. So that's about 6 to 8 hours that you could have been doing on self-development, on scheduling those client calls, those cold calls to get a new deal, to sell your product, to do whatever, right? So just understand that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. For every yes, there's a no.
Yeah, big time. So another point that I probably should have actually made this a number one is finding your purpose. I think that will make you extremely organized and more focused, and basically support all the things that we've talked about so far, i.e. making a schedule and backwards planning and putting it on a schedule, right? So if you know your purpose, right, you finding your why. Simon Sinek wrote a great book called Find Your Why, or I think it's called Find Your Why.
Yeah, Find Your Why.
Yep. Yeah, a great book on Find Your Why, and in it, he talks about essentially purpose, like what your purpose in life is, right? And it takes some time to really think about it and figure out what it is that you want to achieve in different aspects, your family, your business, your, just what you want to contribute to society, right? If you know those things, right, then it helps you become laser focused on what your objective is. And then you can take that, right? You got to figure out where you want to end at, beginning with the end in mind type deal. You got to figure out where you want to end at first, and then figure out what type of person that needs to be. And then what do you need to do to get to that end goal, right? So in order to do that, you got to first find out what it is, and then you can backwards plan, and you can utilize the schedule that Mike is talking about to actually get to your end objective. So I probably should have said that first. Start with why, right? Start with why. That's a huge one. And to go along with that, I keep little, if you know me, you guys have seen this little notebook thing. I mean, I make it over and over again every year or so when I go and redo my goals, but on it, it literally outlines all my goals. This is my purpose, what I want to do in life. It has like, hey, the way I'm going to get to it, the timeline, backwards planned. Like, strongly recommend kind of doing the same thing. You couple these things together and then just laser focus, man. It's crazy. So
I love that. I didn't even know that you kept that thing on you. So I learned something today, man. And for every agent that we train, for every investor or client that we consult with, when everybody asks us, this is what I want to do, I always ask why, right? And then I don't stop at the first. I make them go 3 deep. Because here's the thing. A lot of people will say, hey, I want $10,000 a month. Well, why? Oh, so I can, spend more time with my family. Okay, that's nice, but why? Oh, because I grew up in a household where my parents were never around, and I don't want to do that to my kids.
Yes.
That's powerful, right?
Yes.
You have to dig deep. You got to go at least 3 deep. Hell, if you can go 8 deep, go 8.
I've heard 7 deep, like, really brings people to tears. Like that really bring people to tears.
But see, that's the key though, because if you don't get chills or you don't get emotional behind your why,
passion.
It's passion, man. Because everybody says, well, how do you always stay motivated? Man, please. Motivation fades. I don't know about you, Dan, but there's times where I wake up in the morning where I'm like, yo, I just want to lay here. It's not motivation, right? Motivation fades. Discipline, that why, that's what sticks with you. When you're laying in the bed and you're like, man, I really don't want to get up. I really don't want to make these 20 cold calls. I really don't want to go market my product today. But you remember that 7-level deep why. You hear your kid snoring in the other room or whatever it is. He's like, all right, I'm going to get up. Right. So it's super important to find your purpose. I'm really glad that you honed in on that, because that is going to be that alone will be like, all right, now I'm going to backwards plan. Now I'm going to create a calendar. Now I am going to start organizing my life.
Big time, man. The passion that's completely propelled me to a different level as far as my productivity and what I'm actually doing. Once I sat down and literally probably took about 2 to 3 days developing this little goals list. And once a year I go by and redo it over again. And it outlines all my relationship goals, how I want my family to be like. If you guys leave a comment below, if you guys want it, I'll shoot it out and I'll put it out there. I've given it to my soldiers and stuff as examples to help them, not just be good soldiers, but also to be good people. I talk about it. I like the idea of you being great soldiers, but I like even better you being great, productive members of society, successful members of society for the world. So big time. That'll
everybody should go ahead and jump in the comments. And if you're not afraid or not ashamed to share it, put your why in the comments below. And I think that's really empowering, because everybody will start to see that it takes some vulnerability to express your true why. It does. But you'll be surprised at how many more people you might motivate by expressing your true why as well. So, this is a community of sharing and caring, right? We always want to make sure that everybody is constantly developing themselves, not only as real estate investors, not only as service members, but as Dan said, as, contributing members to society. So yeah, drop those in the comments. We'd love to hear that. All right. What else we got, man? We got purpose, why, right? We got our backwards planning, beginning with the end in mind. We have the calendar. If it's not on the calendar, then it doesn't exist. And I know you mentioned something to me, Dan, about planning the day ahead, planning the week ahead before. Talk to me
Yeah.
about that.
I mean, that's pretty much, I kind of lump that into backwards planning, right? So, if you have a goal in mind, right, you need to do the backwards planning with it, but before you execute the next day, you should already know what you're going to do that day. That way, so for example, tonight, pretty much every single night, I'm pretty consistent with it. Every single night, I write down all the tasks I got for the next day, all the things I want to accomplish for the next day. I prioritize that list, and then I start putting it on a timeline and matching it up against what's on my calendar, what I know. Hey, I got a podcast interview for, at this time. All right. So I know I can't slot X, Y, and Z in that place. So that planning out that day ahead, I'm deliberately thinking about how I'm going to execute it. And I do it the night before when I go to sleep. I'm, subconsciously thinking about that stuff. As I wake up in the morning, boom, focus. I read my little goals list, right? Get me reamped up, remotivated for the day, understanding my purpose. And it gets you you already know what you're going to do for that day. You already have it scheduled out. Same thing with the week. On Sundays, tomorrow, what I'm going to do is make out my list from Monday through the next week, right? I look at my calendar. I look at, I've already done my backwards planning, and I plan out the week. All right, these are the big rocks that I need to get done on these specific days. These are the big rocks that I need to complete this week in order to stay on glide path to the backwards plan that I made to my bigger end goal, right? So the same thing with the month, the same thing with the year, man. Like this, that's what that's just what people are doing. That's just what I found a lot of successful people are doing. And if it's worked for hundreds and thousands of years, then I'm not gonna break what's what's fixed. And it's definitely helped propel my life in a different trajectory than and it's faster, much faster than what I've ever thought. So
Success leaves clues. Like you said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
yeah.
And that's a perfect way that just because you learned or to use a calendar doesn't mean you know how to use a calendar, right? So you're always constantly looking for ways to improve. And Dan hit the nail on the head. He's just talking about, all right, there's a calendar here. Great. This is good. Big rocks first. And we can put those a year, 2 years out, right? If we know a birthday's coming up in 8 months, we know we want to be there. Great. We can put that on the calendar. Christmas, great. New deployment for service members, great. We put it on the calendar way ahead because it's there. Now, the night before, you're planning all the minor stuff. Oh, maybe I work 30 minutes on my essay homework here. Maybe I podcast here, right? And you do that and you just kind of plan it out. Now, it can be the night before, it can be the morning of, but nonetheless, you're doing it preemptively to maximize those little brains, right? You see how all of this is kind of coming together? And one of the biggest things, I guess, my last thing is you always want to start with the most important things first. And now this is kind of like a tricky question because some people and there's many different opinions of what's most important. There are, right? And there's even charts out there, from Stephen Covey and all these other people. But I would stand pretty firm in saying that the most important thing starts with your mind and yourself. And so for me, one of the things that I'm a big advocate for is a morning ritual, if you will. And I use Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning for Millionaires as my cornerstone. Yep, there it is. I know Dan's got it. Put it on. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, he's holding it up. Boom, Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. Now, Hal Elrod it's not a big book. Yeah, if you guys if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it's not that thick of a book.
It's like, and it's got some graphics. I'm not real drawings, little charts in there too. It's about 130 pages or so.
130 pages, guys. 130 pages. Pick it up. You can read it. If you guys have already listened to our top 5 recommended books for entrepreneurs, that book is in there. That's one of mine. But nonetheless, you get your mind right. You wake up in the morning. It can be 6 minutes. It can be 1 hour. It can be 2 hours. It doesn't matter. But you do this ritual because remember, motivation fades. Discipline is what compounds, right? And if you stay disciplined to that morning routine and following through with everything that you put on your calendar, right? To follow your backwards plan, and you always remember your purpose and your why, you will find out very quickly, this is exactly how the greats become more organized in life.
It's huge, man. Yeah. Hey, just drop some serious knowledge on how to stay more organized in life. That is some serious stuff. And I hope that, if you're listening to this, you're not just listening to it, but you're already taking action, or you're going to start taking action on some of these things. Especially if you are any kind of entrepreneur or business owner or something like that. These are like fundamentals, man. Like it's definitely going to help you. It's not going to do anything but help propel you much faster in the direction that you want to be in. So strongly recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah, man. And you can always get better, guys. Understanding concepts is great, but you got to practice, right? I don't expect any one of you guys to just wake up tomorrow morning and be an expert at backwards planning. But we gave you some tools. The One Thing by Gary Keller. Go get that book, read it, follow their business model, right? You can Google footnotes, but you guys have an outline now. So I challenge you all to start being more productive in your lives.
Yes. Hey, so wrapping it up really quick. Hey, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, do us a favor, please like, comment, share, subscribe. We'll make sure we comment back on any of your questions that you have. If you want this product, if you want these products, these like little goals lists and things like that, we put out stuff like this on our Facebook group. So there's always links on there. We put this stuff out. Just look up Military Cash Flow on Facebook, and you'll see our group. Just add the group. There's over 300 right now at the time of this recording. I'm sure by the time this gets released, it'll probably be, I don't know, we might be in 1,000 or something like that, So, cause we just created it like 3 weeks ago. So, but we got 300, literally 300 military investors in there. And you're not just going to get the opinions or the suggestions from myself and Mike, but there's also other real estate professionals that are in that group that are actively helping members out. So that's how we're doing. We're just building this network here, and we put out product, and we're helping other investors build and grow and create wealth for themselves. So it's great stuff. Lastly, if you're listening to us on podcasts, do us a favor, leave us that 5-star review. And I don't have anything else. You got anything else, Mike?
That's it. Go forth and let's make this military cash flow.
All right. Hey, with that said, this is Dan Wynn
And Mike Glaspie.
signing off.